Well,
your question is for?
He's first.
Clean slate. Well, actually, it is for Mr. D'Souza. I'd like to state my respect for both of you. We had a meaningless exercise on our website at work where everyone was required to post.
Let's have the question.
I'll get right to it. This is a meaningful setup. Who would you most like to have a beer with? A meaningless question. My answer was alive or dead. You had to pick two. Ronald Reagan, for his moral courage, his stance, his end of the Soviet Union. And then Christopher Hitchens was my dead. I thought I would stir it up, but it seemed that no one had heard of Mr. Hitchens. So it really caused no furor. I go to church with my wife every week, although I try to believe, as Mr. Hitchens' friends do, I'm not able to because I have many of the same questions. Whenever I ask the pastor questions, they're not answered.
Let's have a very quick question.
Okay, so they're reduced to, this question. If God is a loving God and He is all-knowing, He knows your destiny as your soul is created. Your soul has been created and predetermined. Some have to be predetermined for a life of hell and torture. If He knows your destiny before you're born, He creates souls knowingly, destined for hell. How does a loving God do that?
Okay, I'll answer your question.
Well, in there.
Well, you have, let's look at, for example, some of the things that Christopher said earlier. He said, if there is a God, I want nothing to do with Him. If there is a heaven, I don't want to go there. For me, it's celestial North Korea. I don't want to stand in line and hand out garlands. So, all I'm saying is, in a universe of free will, all that God has to say to Christopher is, you have chosen freely, and I accede to your wish. God isn't flinging Christopher Hitchens into hell. Heaven is available to Christopher Hitchens, but he doesn't want to go there.
I have to say, I have to sound more judgmental than perhaps I have been up to now. Say that a half-truth is an absolutely terrible thing. What you've just said is very nearly true, but if it was true, morally true, if it had any intellectual integrity to it, I'd have to believe that free will is something I can be given. Now, if I can be given it, gifted it, it's not free will. I'd be told, you can refuse my offer of heaven if you like. You can refuse my human sacrifice, my willingness to be tortured to death in your sight to save you. You can refuse this wonderful offer if you want. You can't duck the offer. It will be made to you. But if you do refuse it, you have to depart into everlasting fire. This is not free will. This is the most capricious form of tyranny and sadomasochism. Surely that's plain to everybody here.
Yes, sir.
Now, while on the subject of half-truth, I simply have to say that it is not true that Hitler's compromise with Catholicism ended when his regime began. His regime began, in fact, with a Concordat, the first treaty that the Nazi regime signed in its first week of existence with the Vatican, giving the Nazi Party a monopoly over education and the raising of all children in Germany in exchange for a Catholic monopoly in liturgical matters. And that Hitler's birthday was celebrated from the pulpit every year of the regime. And I love Hitler's table talk too, and I agree with Dinesh. I'll go this far. You should all read it. I'll tell you why. It's been asked ever since Nuremberg, many, many times, why was no member of the Nazi Party ever threatened with excommunication for taking part in the final solution? How can that be? The church would condemn people for the smallest thing. They would deny them the sacraments. 25%, according to Paul Johnson, Catholic historian, of the Waffen-SS were confessing, communicating Roman Catholics.
Let's hear
no one ever threatened at any point with excommunication for what the church knew was going on. But there was a member of the Nazi Party who was excommunicated.
I'll have to cut you off
and
there.
I'll tell you, no, wait,
this
sorry,
here
I've got to do it. And it was Joseph Goebbels. And do you know why he was thrown out by the church? Shall I tell you? For marrying a divorced Protestant. Magda Goebbels.
Let's go to the gentleman down here.
That's where he crossed the line. That's a Hitler's table talk too.
Let's go to the
Check
gentleman
it
down
out.
here.
The Vatican does have its standards after all.
To whom, sir, do you direct your question?
The question is directed to both individuals, but specifically to D'Souza. Earlier, I felt like the caricaturization of atheists was that they were dodging belief in God because of moral issues. But the atheists and skeptics that I know, it's a matter of honesty. So I would like to ask both this question. What kind of person burns other persons alive for unflagging and unflinching honesty?
Okay. Mr. D'Souza?
Well, I confess no urge whatsoever to burn you alive. I'm delighted to entertain your question, however, and maybe burn it alive. But here's what I'm getting at, and that is, if you don't believe in something, because there isn't enough evidence, normally you just kind of go about your life as if that something didn't exist. For example, I don't believe in unicorns, but you'll notice I haven't written any books called The End of Unicorns, Unicorns Are Not Great, The Unicorn Delusion. You won't find a lifelong obsession with unicorns. I don't hold conferences on unicorns to denounce them. Here's what I'm getting at. When the atheist goes beyond mere disbelief into what you can call evangelical atheism, missionary atheism, a desire to proselytize, which is a hallmark. Why are you shouting at me? I'm answering your question. I know painfully for you, but I am answering it.